The original Duel Monsters series was produced by Studio Gallop. They definitely upgraded the visuals from the season produced by Toei. The openings were all pretty good, my personal favourites being Shuffle and Overlap for their strong visuals that flow between each other perfectly and their songs. Seeing as it basically adapts the Death T arc of the anime into the first episode with Atem defeating Kaiba with Exodia, the series then introduces Pegasus J. Crawford, the creator of the card game that the series now revolves around because of its marketability. Pegasus seals Yugi's grandfather's soul within a card and uses him to get Yugi to compete in his tournament to save him. Jonochi also competes in order to win the prize money to pay for his sister's surgery. I personally really enjoyed this opening arc for multiple reasons. The first being the introduction to the game of Duel Monsters. The arc shows the different card types and strategies even though it barely resembles the later game we know and love today. It does work introducing new players to the game. Duelist Kingdom had miniature stadiums that allowed the duelists to battle before the introduction of the dual disc systems later. The other reason being our villain. Pegasus is my favourite villain in Duel Monsters because he loves cartoons and I love cartoons. His favourite TV series is Funny Rabbit, which is a reference to Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. He is also pretty over the top and creative due to him creating Duel Monsters and his own deck being the Toon Monsters, even though at the time the Toon Monsters weren't good cards and they've only become better over time. The tournament arc setup allowed the series to introduce many long-running characters like Insector Haga, who was an insect expert, Ryuzaki, who used a dinosaur deck, and Maikujaku, who was after the prize money through the tournament and was a Harpy Lady player. Haga threw away Yugi's Exodia, starting a rivalry throughout the series with Ryuzaki as the Bulk and Skull characters. Mai, however, developed into a more compassionate and caring duelist through her interactions with Yugi and the crew. She gave Jonochi her card to enter the finals after losing to Yugi and his Blackluster Soldier. Kaiba returns to rescue his brother from Pegasus for the key card so he could control the Kaiba Corporation. Pegasus forces him to duel Yugi just to get the chance to battle him. This duel allows the audience to see Atem's longing for victory and will do anything to win. Yugi has to stop him from throwing Kaiba off a cliff through winning the duel. Kaiba then duels Pegasus on his own field instead of using the prototype duel disc, falling into the power of the Millennium Eye. It allows Pegasus to read Kaiba's mind and know his strategies, allowing him to defeat him. Atem duels Mai first and has issues due to his mind being clouded by trying to save Yugi's grandfather and losing to Kaiba. Mai then kicks Atem around before he gets his groove back and summons the previously mentioned Blackluster Soldier. Jonochi manages to defeat the cheating bandit Keith next and duel Atem. The duel should have gone to Jonochi because of the great use of his cards in his strategy, even though it is dumb how Atem used Time Wizard to defeat him. Atem then duels Pegasus while Honda attempts to save Mokuba while he is being pursued by Bakura possessed by the Millennium Ring. He had duelled Atem earlier in the arc. The duel rages on with Atem and Yugi switching control in order to combat his Millennium Eye. Pegasus transforms the duel into a shadow duel and unleashes both Relinquished and Thousand Eyes Restrict. Going from ritual to fusion was something new and different at the time, seeing as fusion was the only extra deck summoning technique. Atem uses the power of Kuribo and Magician of Black Chaos to claim victory. This duel goes on for a while, mostly due to the padding of the Honda and Bakura subplot. After the duel, the cast discovers Pegasus' motivation as he wanted to use Kaiba's solid vision technology to resurrect his wife, and seeing how far it has come during Arc 5, I can see the potential of his plan. Bakura steals his eye by literally pulling it out of his face, leaving it ambiguous to his fate. Mokuba and Sugoroku are free and the crew head into some filler episodes. They mostly exist to set up later characters like Rebecca Hopkins, who challenges Yuki for the Blue Eyes White Dragon card that her father gave to Sugoroku. They have a duel that mirrored one that their elders had, and she's a little brat in this episode. I don't enjoy her character and she doesn't improve when she returns in the Doma arc. The Duel Monsters quest arc returns to Kaiba being trapped inside a video game being developed by the Big Five after their betrayal with Pegasus. Mokuba escapes and recruits Yugi and Jonochi to save him. Cue reuse of strategies seen in Duelist Kingdom. Finally, there was the introduction of Ryuji and his game game Dungeon Dice Monsters. He is challenged to a duel by Jonouchi and defeats him before challenging Yugi to a game of Dungeon Dice Monsters. It is revealed he originally planned to release the game with Pegasus as a partner, but due to his state after Duelist Kingdom, Ryuji blames Yugi for what happened to him. After Atem defeats him, they hear that Pegasus is recovering, which I felt was a clever move as he was brought back for GX. Ryuji would join the sidelines in watching and commenting on duels, which I will talk about more later. This leads into the next arc, Battle City, and the introduction of the next villain, Marek. Marek wields the Millennium Rod, which allows him to control people. Meanwhile, Isis, Marek's sister, approaches Kaiba and hands him one of the 3 Egyptian god cards, Obelisk. He tells him of the other cards, which leads Kaiba to create the Battle City tournament in order to get the owners of the god cards in one place. Yugi and Jonouchi enter and have to battle Marek's henchmen called ghouls coming after them to get to the pharaoh. Due to Marek's backstory of his father carving the secrets to the pharaoh's past into his back and living underground with his family because of a man who died thousands of years ago, Marek is a bit pissed off. All he wanted was to be free and he was trapped in his own destiny. With this arc's introduction of the new rules which followed the real world card game distributed by Konami, instead of summoning monsters without their levels mattering, high level monsters required sacrifices now. The other thing that was introduced in this arc was the dual disc system, portable devices that allowed the duelist to duel anywhere. They have appeared throughout the franchise, being upgraded every entry. I love the dual discs. They allowed the different rules that changed the game, like pendulum scales, to just fit naturally into the world. Mostly the opening duels are Atem battling ghouls and then gaining Osiris, while Jonouchi battles mostly duelists from Duelist Kingdom like Haga. Jonouchi's deck got plenty of upgrades from his duel against Ryuji. Atem also introduced new cards like the Dark Magician Girl, who would later grow into her own archetype with the release of Dark Sides of Dimensions. Bakura, possessed by the ring, again teams up with Marek in order to further each other's goals. Bakura gets the Millennium Rod and Marek gets his revenge. The opening duels of Battle City are okay, just okay. It's the template for the future tournament arcs within the franchise, like the World Duel Carnival in Zell and the Miami Championship in Arc 5, collecting different items within the tournament like the heart pieces and pendulum cards. The problem with Battle City is it nearly reaches being an interesting tournament arc with the different factions fighting for different reasons. Throwing Bakura in improves this, but it just comes down to being a three-way battle between Atem, Kaiba and Marek, which pulls it down. After collecting the different cards from the defeated duelists, the group along with Mai head to the semi-finals, which is held on a blimp. Marek and his servant Rashid enter as well, with the former pretending to be Marek to hide his identity. Atem first duels Bakura, who immediately is called out. Bakura uses Destiny Board in order to literally spell out his death. The only thing Atem can do is summon a god. That was an awesome summon and allows Atem to defeat Bakura again. Jonouchi and Rashid duel next and battle using their signature cards. Jonouchi using gambling cards, while Rashid uses trap monsters. Trap monsters have been seen over the years, for example the Phantom Knights for Xyz summoning. I like them even though I believe they should be more specific archetypes that use them, like the Phantom Knights. This duel is kind of strange as it fleshes out Marek's backstory in relation to Rashid as his adoptive brother. Rashid attempts to summon a copy of Ra, but instead enrages the god and strikes him down. This awakens a threat far worse than Marek from within himself, Yami Marek, the twisted mirror image who loves pain and torturing his opponents, starting with Mai, who he defeats in a shadow duel and seals in an hourglass, watching her friends enjoy themselves without her. Let's talk about women in Yu-Gi-Oh! This franchise has a problem with female characters. They are metaphorically thrown under a bus to give character development to other characters. Sometimes they avoid it, like with Aki from 5Ds, but most of the time women in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are either useless like Kotori in Zell, or try to duel and are defeated over and over again like Aoi in Vrains. At least in the Doma arc it tried to repair what happened to Mai with her character, but this needs to stop happening. Back to the plot, Kaiba duels Isis and defeats her without the use of his god card, but instead his blue eyes. This flew in the face of her prediction through her Millennium item season, but he changed destiny. This ended the semi-finals, but this wasn't the last duel, as Bakura comes back to battle Yami Merrick alongside the original Marek. This duel is pretty one-sided, with Yami Merrick using his god card in order to defeat Bakura. The semi-finals is again like the rest of the tournament, which is okay but needed more expansion on some of its characters. With the amount of episodes in the arc, there is a lot of filler, even though it could have done more with Marek, Rashid or Isis. It's not bad but could have been better. After the semi-finals of Battle City, the plot goes into the filler arc of the virtual world. The group is captured and sent into the virtual reality world controlled by Noah Kaiba. He wants revenge against the Kaiba brothers for stealing his life after he was trapped in the virtual world and his father adopted them. Noah sets the Big Five, who are also trapped in the world after their betrayal, against the group. They want the bodies of the protagonists in order to get their lives back.
What?
Seeing as this is a filler arc, I will be brief on my thoughts about it. This arc is full of stupid, from the Debt Masters, who are monsters that can be used for super duper moves, to the plan of the villains wanting to steal a bunch of teenagers' bodies that will somehow fix their lives. This arc did serve to flesh out the backstories of both Kaiba brothers. I will give this arc points for using characters like Anzu and Honda in duels. The side characters exist in the show as cheerleaders and little more. The virtual world allowed the cheerleaders to choose their own decks and battle with varying degrees of success. To summarize the virtual world, it's not terrible, but there are better filler arcs out there. My main issue being the Debt Masters, which are just there as a get out of jail free card for the characters. It doesn't reflect the real game, and unfortunately it wouldn't be the last time the franchise has made up its own dumb rules. Speaking of which, back to the Battle City finals. The four duelists of Atem, Kaiba, Jonochi and Yami Merrick duel in a four-way battle. Whoever reaches the top of the tower duels first. Jonochi manages to battle Yami Merrick first in revenge for what he did to Mai. Yami Merrick is angry at not getting to duel Atem first and uses a match to torture Jonochi. This duel further shows how insane Yami Merrick is, as he breaks Jonochi with his varying strategies such as Lava Golem and of course Ra. The attack from Ra leaves Jonochi effectively dead, though he does recover in a coma. This leads into the long-awaited duel between Atem and Kaiba. Through the battle between gods and Karibos, I can say this duel is a battle between rivals and is really padded. It takes forever, with both Atem and Kaiba cycling through their decks before Atem defeats Kaiba, because of course. The duel between Jonochi and Kaiba afterwards was much more interesting. That duel had development for both sides, with Jonochi striding to show Kaiba how much he had grown, and Kaiba respecting him more for his skills and placement in the tournament. Finally, there is a duel between Atem and Yami Merrick. Yami Merrick sets up the game with both Yugi and Marek on the line depending on the victor. However, the duel changes when Rashid finally wakes up. This leaves Atem an opening to fight back. Marek and Yami Merrick swap places and he surrenders, destroying the evil within himself. That was easy. With Kaiba destroying the tower where the tournament took place to end it, that wraps up Battle City. Marek, Rashid and Isis return to Egypt, with the rest of the gang heading back to their normal lives. So in the end, what do I think of Battle City in full? While not my favourite tournament arc in the franchise, it was cool to enjoy the different duels with the old and new characters. Yami Merrick was one of the better villains in Duel Monsters due to his straight up villainy. The duels mostly aren't boring, even though some rely on pulling card effects out of nowhere, but after this tournament there were another two filler arcs, the first being the Doma arc. Atem attempts to use the god cards he won in order to unlock his past, but he is delayed by the resurgence of the organization known as Doma. They are attempting to revive a giant evil monster to destroy the world. The organization, led by Dartsu, sends the three swordsmen to steal the god cards to use their power to fuel their giant monster. They use the field spell called the Seal of Orichalcos to both power up their own monsters and steal the defeated players' souls, again for the giant monster. However, Atem, Kaiba and Jonochi get new dragon cards which allow them to fuse with other cards to create new fusion monsters to fight back. My favourite part of this arc has to be when Atem is defeated by one of the swordsmen, Raphael. One of the most frustrating parts of this franchise is how the protagonist always wins and barely loses, so it's refreshing to see a villain defeat the hero and lose Yugi due to the power of the field spell. To add insult to injury, Atem was the player who activated the seal of Orichalco because he will do anything to win due to his past and unending winning streak. Raphael is my favourite villain in the arc because of his backstory of losing his family and joining Doma. He was also the first character who could see dual spirits, which I will get back to in a later video. I find the other swordsmen fine, just not as good as Raphael. Also, the final duel where Atem and Kaiba team up to duel darts is cool since the last time they worked together was in Battle City. Finally, thank you Konami for releasing the legendary dragon cards for the fusion monsters in the TCG. So with that, we can move into another filler arc. This was a tournament arc which is mostly about a rival company to Kaiba Corporation. The head of that company, known as Siegfried, enters the tournament along with his brother to destroy Seto and his company at his own amusement park. Again, this arc is mostly here to both fill up time and advertise cards in the game. Kind of annoys me how Jonochi loses to Siegfried after developing as a duelist over the series, though he did gamble his victory away and paid the price. This arc does push Atem off until the end, where he duels the winner of the tournament, which allows more time for the other characters. I especially love the duel between Siegfried and Seto, where he just destroys him in front of the entire world, so overall a just okay filler arc. That trading card that could infect a computer with a virus though was funny. Now for the final arc that ends this chapter of the franchise, the Millennium arc, where the questions are answered and Atem is sent into a game resembling his past against Yami Bakura. Bakura's plan to release his true power in the past is a giant demon thing called Zork Necrophades to destroy the world through the Millennium items. So Atem, Yugi and his friends have to discover his name, which is Atem, and fuse the three Egyptian gods into the creator god of light who destroys Zork in the end. You know, the one thing I find amazing about this arc is how short it is. It's shorter than the Doma arc, and I understand that arc was there to fill time. Anyway, this arc is interesting as it shows the past characters who kind of resemble their modern day counterparts. Hi Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. Zork is kind of dumb for the final villain to be a big monster. At least Zork dueled the protagonist. Zork just lumbers around like Godzilla or something. It's really weird not having many duels in this arc apart from Yugi versus Bakura. I mean, the ancient duel discs are cool and all, but seeing as this arc was adapting from the manga, I can see why there weren't many duels. Speaking of which, the duel between Yugi and Bakura is great for showing Yugi's skills as a duelist. So after all of that, it ends with the duel between Yugi and Atem. While Atem used the three god cards, Yugi uses different cards to counter, like level and magnet warriors. Through the use of Silent Magician, Yugi defeats Atem and he leaves for the spirit world to return in a future film. So in the end, what do I think of this season? I like it, though it's neither the best nor my favourite. It pretty much is the traditional shonen, from the dueling to the protagonist being more focused on than the supporting cast. It always builds up to Atem dueling the villain, which later seasons would flip the idea on its head. The supporting cast didn't do much, which was unfortunate as I felt they had potential like Anzu. Later seasons would have most of the cast dueling, which balanced out the plots instead of just most of the focus going to the main protagonists. In terms of the card game, only two special summoning mechanics existed back then, Fusion and Ritual. Fusion has had the biggest impact on the game out of the two, with every season after this using it at least once. Fusion cards are still used in a variety of decks and was heavily promoted more in the next season, GX. Rituals have been less used, mostly due to not being an extra deck monster. The problem is needing both a monster and spell card in the hand with other monsters to sacrifice. Again, more promotion in GX, but not as good as Fusion due to the requirements. This is why tuners were needed. Kaiba develops the most alongside Jonochi. They both grow in different ways. Kaiba went from a man after power by taking the Blue Eyes to building a better world by his technological advances. He built the future of the sequel seasons with their technologies and corporations being connected to Kaiba Corp. Jonochi went from a guy who could barely play the game to a great duelist due to his experience and gambling soul. His sister and her support was the springboard that allowed him to enter and challenge the dueling world. Finally, there is Atem and Yugi. The funniest part is how the show pushes Atem in front of Yugi a lot of the time. Yugi could probably have handled himself in most situations. The use of amnesia is better executed here than other series because of the time gap between ancient Egypt and the modern day, with the three god cards being the keys to Atem's memories. Through his interactions with Atem allowed Yugi to surpass him and become the king of duelists. We'll talk about his future during GX. Unfortunately, next we have to talk about the film Pyramid of Light, produced by 4Kids. I'm not looking forward to it. If you like this video, please give it a a like, subscribe, and hit that notification button for more content from yours truly. Also, follow me on Twitter through the link in the description. Cheers for watching.
そして僕の物語は始まったばかりなんだ。